like to introduce Eli Pariser, the Executive Director of MoveOn.org, and Ben Branzel, MoveOn's Organizing Director, and the man who came up with the amazing idea that became HurricaneHousing.org.
Good evening, everybody. We will keep this short. Are there any MoveOn members here in the house? Please raise your hand. Hi. I just want to start by saying thank you to the MoveOn members who are here tonight. Thank you. Because people often thank me for what MoveOn does, and I tell them it really isn't me. It's not me. It's not Ben. It's our members. It's the 3 million people across America who have come together to guide our great nation on a better course. And that is what you are all doing, and I thank you so much. Really, it's the greatest honor that I've ever had. The greatest honor in my life is to work for all of you, so thank you. And now the story of Hurricane Katrina, of hurricane housing rather, because this really isn't about MoveOn, it's not about our staff. It's about love and community. It's about how much stronger love and community are than anger and greed. And all of this started on Wednesday, August 31st, 2005. Thousands of people were gathered at the Superdome. Houses were underwater, and our TV screens were full of images of horror and destruction, images that we've seen in other countries sometimes, but never in our own. We knew that MoveOn members and Americans across the country were watching this with the same emotions that we had. And we knew that because MoveOn members are the kind of people who, when a disaster unfolds, be it a flood, be it a war, be it a failed president, they roll up their sleeves. They roll up their sleeves and get to business. We knew that MoveOn members wanted to do something, but what? We racked our brains. Money was pouring in, and the additional money that our members could contribute seemed like a small thing. What could our members do that would be of some use? So Adam said, you know, what about getting them to volunteer to rebuild housing? And I tossed in, you know, what about getting people to go down there? And Ben said, let's get our members to donate housing. And Justin said, what about organizing people to make sure they're politically protected? And then everyone was like, hey, wait a minute. Go back one. Housing. That's something that our members have that these people desperately need. What about a kind of souped up national bulletin board where people could post housing if they had it, could say, hey, I've got a bed and I'm willing to lend it out. And where folks who really needed housing could find it. And so that was Ben's idea. And he's with us tonight. And I'm going to let him tell just a little bit more about how this all came together.
Hey, everyone. You know, lots of people have great ideas. The only difference is that this idea happened to take place where there were 3 million people able to make something good out of it. So that's really all of you who deserve a round of applause there. Not me. All right, so I'll admit it. You know, when we first started Hurricane Housing, you know, even I had no idea if it was going to work. Because this is a really big thing to ask, right? I mean, it looks good in retrospect, but remember what you were seeing at the time. You were looking at every single news station filled with these sensationalist images of violence and theft and anarchy and all these whispers of homicide and, you know, these crazy people. So asking our members to open our homes and bring strangers into them was a pretty big deal. And we had no idea if it was going to work. But we went ahead anyway. And you know why. Because what other choice did we have? Good people were suffering, and finding shelter right away had to be our top priority. Yeah. I still remember that afternoon. It was crazy. Around 10 o'clock that night, Justin finished a prototype for the site, and programmers literally around the world were coding furiously to make it live by the next morning. By around 3 a.m., I finished the email that we were going to send out to all of our members, a lot of you here, to announce the program. Here's how it began. Today, tens of thousands of hurricane survivors are being bused to a stadium in Houston, where they may wait for months. Almost 80,000 are competing for area shelters, and countless more are in motels, their vehicles, or wherever else they can find. But if you've got a spare room, an extra bed, or even a decent couch, you can help. So we reached out to our friends that night, that crazy night, and they responded, eager to help. Rosie and Moby, who are here tonight as just two examples, dropped everything that they were doing so that they could make PSAs, to get the word out about hurricane housing, to show people there was some place they could turn. And organizations that we work with, everyone down the line, Democracy for America, the DNC, I mean, everyone reached out to get the word out to people in need. Anyway, that's how it all began. So that morning we decided, hey, if we could get our members to contribute, let's say 1,000 beds, it would all be worth it, certainly worth it. But would they do it? Well, it didn't take long for the answers to start coming in. A college student from Mississippi, right, 8 a.m. Hey, I've got dorm space if a couple of people want to come share it with me. We've got a family from Florida, writes in and says, hey, I can house a whole family. Not only that, I can help the kids in that family find space in nearby schools. They're good schools. Come join me here. And that's how it went all day. So by the end of that day, we closed our eyes, we crossed our fingers, and we looked at the results. You know what we found? Our members didn't contribute 1,000 beds that day. They contributed 30,000 beds that very first day. And it just kept coming in like rain. Within the next few weeks, good, clean, reliable shelter for 80,000 men, women, and children had been posted on hurricanehousing.org. Now, some of those heroes are with us tonight. Some are the heroes who defied those images on television, who wouldn't give in to their fear, who opened their arms and their homes to complete strangers. Let's give them a round of applause. And then we also have the other heroes here, some of those other heroes. Heroes who braved the storm, who survived catastrophic loss, and who wouldn't give in to their fear, and who were willing to reach out and accept the offer of a total stranger. Let's give a round of applause for those heroes too. Particularly want to acknowledge too, Linda and Philip, who are here with us tonight, whose stories you can find in the book, It Takes a Nation.
And so, as people started making these critical connections, we started hearing the stories back. And I just want to read you a very, very short part of one, because it stuck with me ever since this happened. It's from a guy named Brian. He was in Hot Springs, Arkansas, and he said, I'm on HUD, and I had to get permission from the housing authority to house evacuees. My story is the poor helping the poor. I don't have a dime, he said. I don't have a dime, so I couldn't help that way. But I do have a roof over my head and a freezer full of food that I'm willing to share to help out. And that's really the spirit of what happened in hurricane housing. That's why Laura decided to write a book about it. And I think it's worth remembering, because we live in a time when many of our nation's leaders seek to divide us against each other. They believe that the world is a fight, all against all, to get to the top. That it doesn't matter if we leave people behind. Indeed, that a ruthless willingness to step on those below you means that you are a worthy person. For the majority of us who disagree with them, it is easy to become dispirited. It's easy even to begin to believe that perhaps people are so belligerent and nasty and ruthless. The Hurricane Housing Project reminds us that there are greater forces than greed in America. And it reminds us of this fundamental progressive idea that the strength we have when we're pitted against each other pales in comparison to the strength we have when we stand arm in arm together. Thank you all for being here tonight.